The night was calm, the kind of deep stillness that only comes in the early hours of the morning. My house sat in the cul-de-sac, wrapped in shadows from the old oak trees that lined the road. The hum of crickets was the only sound outside, a lullaby that had finally carried me into sleep after a long day at work. It must have been around 3 in the morning when it happened. The first thud didn't fully wake me. I thought maybe I'd dreamed it. But then came another, louder and sharper, followed by the rattling of the doorknob. I jolted upright in bed, my heart pounding as I tried to make sense of what I was hearing. It wasn't the sound of someone knocking. It was the sound of someone kicking my front door. Before I could even move, Max and Roxy, my 2 German shepherds, were already up. Their ears perked, their bodies tense, and a low growl vibrated through their throats like rolling thunder. In seconds, they were at the door, claws clicking against the wooden floor, their warning growls turning into furious barks that shook the walls. I swung my legs out of bed, adrenaline spiking through my veins. Who would be at my door at this hour? Neighbors? A burglar? I quickly reached for the baseball bat I kept by my dresser, just in case. My mind raced through every possibility, but nothing prepared me for what I saw when I peeked through the peephole. Standing there under the pale yellow glow of the porch light was none other than Karen. Yes, that Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA. Her wild, frizzy hair was sticking out in all directions, like she had just wrestled with her pillow and lost. She was wearing a fluffy robe, slippers that barely clung to her feet, and her face was twisted with fury. Her fists pounded on my door, her voice shrill enough to pierce through the wood. "Open this door," she screeched. "Your key isn't working because I have the master one. Don't make me call security. You know I have rights." For a second, I thought maybe I was still dreaming. What kind of lunatic shows up at someone else's house at 3 a.m. and demands to be let inside? Max and Roxy slammed their bodies against the door, barking louder, their teeth flashing through the narrow gap where Karen had already cracked the frame with her kicking. But Karen didn't back away. If anything, she looked more determined. "This community belongs to me," she yelled, her spit hitting the glass of my window. "You don't have the right to deny me entry. Open up now, or I'll have your dogs taken away." Her words hit me like a slap. I'd dealt with her antics for months, nasty letters about my lawn, fines for leaving my trash can out a few hours late, warnings about my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. But this? Kicking my door in the middle of the night because she thought she had a so-called master key? My blood boiled. I pressed my face closer to the peephole, staring at the woman who thought she could treat my home like her property. Max growled deeper, his body vibrating against the door, while Roxy's barks filled the house like an alarm siren. I reached down, my hand brushing over their fur, giving them a soft command to hold. They stopped barking, though their growls never ceased, their sharp eyes locked on the door. Karen, on the other hand, took their sudden silence as a sign of victory. She smirked, puffed out her chest, and tried the knob again, twisting it furiously as if sheer willpower would unlock it. "I told you," she hissed, her voice dripping with arrogance. "All HOA homes fall under my inspection rights. You can't keep me out." That was it, the last straw. I unlocked my phone and hit record, angling the camera toward the door so her voice carried clear. "Karen," I called out, my tone steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. "It's 3 in the morning. You're trespassing on private property. If you don't leave, I'll have no choice but to call the police." Her laughter cut through the night like glass shattering. "The police?" she cackled. "They already know me. They'll take your mutts away before they touch me. Now open this door." Then came the sound that made my jaw clench, the crack of wood splintering as she raised her slippered foot and slammed it against the door again. The frame groaned under the pressure, and I could see the slightest gap widening where the latch met the strike plate. Max barked again, ferocious and sharp, while Roxy let out a snarl that made my skin prickle. Their bodies pressed so hard against the door that I thought they might bust it open themselves. I whispered the release command. In perfect synchronization, Max and Roxy leapt at the door, their claws raking against the wood, their barks exploding like thunderclaps. Through the thin crack, I caught a glimpse of their teeth, white, sharp, and glistening under the porch light. Karen's reaction was instant. Her face drained of color, Her eyes went wide and she stumbled backward down the steps, screaming at the top of her lungs. "They're going to kill me! These are vicious animals! This is illegal!" She tripped over her slippers and nearly fell onto the lawn, clutching her robe like it was armor. But even then, she didn't admit defeat. She wagged a trembling finger at my door. "I'll have them put down. Do you hear me? Put down!" I cracked the door open just enough to let her see me standing there, phone in hand, with Max and Roxy flanking me like disciplined soldiers. Their ears were pinned forward, their bodies rigid, their growls vibrating against my legs. "Go ahead," I said coldly. "Call whoever you want. But the only thing you'll prove is that you broke into my property at 3 a.m. and that my dogs did exactly what they were trained to do: protect their home." For once, she didn't have a comeback. Her lips trembled, her face pale, and for a split second, she looked almost human. Then with a huff, she spun around and disappeared into the darkness, her slippers slapping against the pavement. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a moment, staring into the night, my heart still hammering in my chest. Max nudged my hand gently while Roxy leaned against my leg, her growl finally fading into a sigh. I scratched their ears, whispering, "Good job." But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to let something like this go. She'd be back, with backup, with lies, with everything she could muster. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because I had proof. I had my dogs. And I had the truth. That night, as I locked the door and headed back to bed, I couldn't help but think. Karen had just declared war, and she had no idea who she was messing with. Karen's voice rose higher, shrill and demanding, as she rattled the handle and threw her weight against the door. "This community belongs to me. You don't have the right to deny me entry," she screamed. My hands clenched into fists as I held the dogs back. Every instinct told me to fling the door open and let Karen get a face full of snarling German shepherds. But I knew better. I wasn't going to risk them hurting someone over this lunacy. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Karen!" I called through the door, my voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through me. "You're trespassing on private property at 3 a.m. Keep kicking my door, and the cops won't be on your side." Her response? A laugh that chilled me. "The cops already know me," she sneered. "They'll take your mutts away before they touch me." "Now open this door." She raised her foot again and slammed it against the wood so hard the frame cracked slightly at the edge. That was it. I gave Max and Roxy the release command to show themselves. In perfect synchronization, they launched against the door with booming barks, their claws scraping wood, their teeth flashing through the slight gap in the doorframe where Karen had split it. Her scream echoed through the night like a siren. She stumbled back onto the porch, clutching her robe, her eyes wide with fear. "They're going to kill me," she shrieked, tripping down my steps. "This is animal abuse. I'll have the HOA fine you, and those beasts will be put down." I swung the door open just a crack, enough for my phone camera to capture her retreat, enough for my dogs to stand tall and imposing at my side. "Go ahead," I said firmly. "Call whoever you want. The only thing you'll prove is that you broke into my property at 3 a.m. and that my dogs did exactly what they were trained to do: protect their home." For once, she had no comeback, just wide eyes, trembling lips, and a stammer before she turned and bolted into the darkness. But I knew Karen too well. She wasn't going to let this end here. She was going to call backup, and when she did, I would be ready. The next morning, as expected, the cavalry arrived. Karen hadn't just called the cops. She dragged the entire HOA board to my driveway, clutching papers and pointing at my door like it was a crime scene. My neighbors peeked out their windows, some curious, some annoyed, and a few secretly rooting for me. The police officer on duty knocked politely and asked me to step outside. Karen pounced before I could say a word. "Arrest him," she demanded, her finger jabbing toward me. "His dogs tried to attack me last night. They're vicious. He's violating every HOA rule." The officer raised an eyebrow, calm as stone. "Ma'am," he said, "we reviewed the footage your neighbor submitted because, yes, someone recorded you screaming on his porch at 3 a.m. He held up his phone, and the whole board gasped as Karen's own voice filled the air. This community belongs to me, and I'll take your mutts away. Her face drained of color.